Morning, everyone. Got a good crowd here today. What the total number is, but number of folks. Looks like we've got 40 folks on the call. And hopefully you signed up for to learn more about our Wetland Technical Assistance Program. We'll be talking about that today. We'll begin with a kind of an overview, relatively brief overview. We'll have time for any questions that you might have. We're also interested in your input. We are in the process of finalizing our application materials, but your input, I think, can be helpful in terms of just how we structure this program. I mean, I think the basic outline is what you're going to hear today, but we also are interested in what types of work products you might be interested in. So are you recording it now? All right, so I'm here in Salem with my colleagues Silas Lobney and Amanda Punton. And also joining us remotely is Melissa Ahrens. And I think Melissa is going to start us out on the presentation. So Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for an overview of the Wetland Technical Assistance Program. As Kevin mentioned, I'll be starting us off, and then I'll turn over to my team members, Amanda and Kevin, to cover the rest of our presentation. And again, there'll be time at the end for your questions. Okay, Silas, if you could go to the second slide, please. We've received a lot of valued feedback from our local partners on roadblocks they've experienced as they address wetland planning requirements and housing development in urbanizing areas. DLCD has been working closely with Department of State Lands to identify ways of streamlining Goal 5 wetland protections within the urbanization process. But one of the main pinch points we hear about is the time and effort that local wetland inventories, or LWIs, involve. This is especially burdensome for smaller jurisdictions that lack staff or experience with wetland planning, as I'm sure some of you have experience with. Due to changes in periodic review requirements and funding, currently less than 1/3 of our cities have DSL approved LWIs. You can see the pink outlines on the map on the slide show cities with an LWI. So statewide, that's not a lot. Specifically, a local wetlands inventory distinguishes between significant and non-significant wetlands. Through the steps outlined in rule, a local government can choose to protect significant wetlands and limit development. This process helps clarify and guide housing development, either UGB-wide or in lands newly added to the UGB that are urbanizing and are planned for residential zoning and development. This grant program aims to support our local partners in LWI work, as well as some other categories of wetland planning, including wetland delineations or upland determinations, and wetland planning mitigation. Amanda is going to dive into the details on those eligible project buckets later on in the presentation. Okay, next slide, please. This grant program was established by Senate Bill 5528 and allocates $500,000 for wetland planning work that facilitates housing development. We're excited that this program will be reoccurring to provide additional rounds of support for local government partners. Cities and counties would be the main applicants for this grant program. However, they could choose to collaborate with the entities listed on the slide who may have specific local expertise and on-ground knowledge that can support housing development in the wetland planning context. Okay, next slide, please. Award types. So for those of you who've received a DLCD technical assistant grant in the past, these are going to look pretty familiar. Specifically for this program, we'll have both direct grants and consultant provided grants available. We're still working through the process to get our consultant list set up. Now I'll turn it over to Amanda to dive into the specifics on eligible projects. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Amanda Punton, Natural Resource Specialist for DLCD, and I help jurisdictions, like over the last many years, go through the process of adopting a local wetland inventory and developing local programs for development and work very closely with Department of State Lands. And they will also be kind of pretty integral to helping us move through some of these grant awards, since they will be very much involved in the work that's needed. So the first category of eligible activities we have is a local wetland inventory. So local wetland inventories could be either for the entirety of a city that does not have one, or for a newly amended UGB area in which a local wetland inventory is required. And that is required when if there's wetlands in that in a UGB expansion area, that's a time when an LWI is required by our Goal 5 rules. And the funding that we would have would, sometimes an LWI is done or submitted, a draft is submitted to DSL, and then they kind of mark it up and say that some additional data or some changes need to be made. And then that goes back to the consultant who has done the work. And so this funding can pay for that iterative work in order to get to LWI approval. That's really all I need to say about that. Although, I mean, we're going to emphasize this later too, but we should keep emphasizing it that so an LWI, let's say for an entire city that doesn't have one, can be integral to developing a better buildable lands inventory, which is then informs where housing can be expected to develop in the city and when there might need to be a UGB expansion. So I think that's where an LWI, citywide LWI, would be tied to supporting housing development. Next slide, please. All right, so the next bucket is the Goal 5 Wetland Protection Program. So that follows, or it basically is included when a local government adopts a local wetland inventory. That inventory is the inventory part of the Goal 5 process. Adopting the program to protect significant resources is the other part of that. So this fund can be used for doing the work to develop that local wetland protection program. And some of this work can be done kind of in parallel with the LWI, because you might anticipate how significant wetlands will be protected, and so you can start getting that language into your code. And the other, so and this grant would generally prefer probably priorities not to pay for a full ESEE analysis as a way to not protect significant wetlands, but the ability to run utilities through a significant wetland in order to serve upland areas. I have seen is kind of an important option to have, and so this grant could pay for that kind of addendum to applying the safe harbor approach to significant wetlands. Next, please. And so this other bucket is really more site-specific wetland work that needs to be done in order to expedite, or at least get over hurdles to developing a site for housing. So if a wetland delineation could be used in order to clearly understand where development could occur without a DSL remove a fill permit, that's something that this grant could pay for. It's kind of the same with determination of uplands. That's another way to figure out, okay, where can we go forward without having to engage DSL? And but that information can also then point to a developer or property owner's recognition that they will not be able to completely avoid a wetland, and so this grant could also pay for a plan for avoidance and minimization. So that's kind of like site designing in order to try to have the littlest encroachment into wetlands. And then if that work has been done, I mean, maybe it could be done concurrently, but you know, timings, we'll kind of see how people propose how grant proposals come in or requests for grants come in. But the last step, if a housing development is going to encroach into a wetland, then mitigation is needed, and this grant could be used for small amounts of encroachment for which permittee responsible mitigation needs to be done, and so this grant could pay for a plan for that, which is required for a DSL permit. And Kevin, are you taking this one or?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll go ahead and jump in here. So, yeah, so that kind of outlines the potential projects that would be funded under this program. And our funding priorities are a little bit different for the local wetland inventory Goal 5 program work versus specific housing related or housing development related projects. For that first category, LWI's Goal 5 programs, one of the criteria we're looking for is if your city, if assuming it's a city, is in a situation where housing is not currently allowed without an LWI or Goal 5 program, typically that's going to be in a UGB expansion area. So if you've recently expanded an urban growth boundary and there's some indication that wetlands are present in that area, the way the rules currently operate, development would not be permitted until you go through that LWI Goal 5 program. We are very much wanting to assist those local governments that are in that position with moving forward with this work. This will also work in tandem with some rulemaking that we're also in the process of doing, and I'll talk about that in just a few more slides. But again, that's one criteria. It's not the sole criteria, but if your city is in that situation, that's a high priority for us to fund. Also, we're looking for a project area that's planned for a large number of housing units or for high density housing. We're really wanting to use this program to support housing development in a variety of ways. The other challenge is the project must be feasibly completed by June 30th, 2027. That's the end of our funding period, the end of the biennium. As was mentioned, we are hopeful that we will continue to be funded in future biennia. I hope that will be the case. Typically, with this type of budgeted item, that would be the case. Of course, no guarantees with how state funding goes. But yeah, so project should be feasibly completed by that time period. And then additionally, we'll put a higher priority on, again, housing development, a project where housing development is feasible by that deadline, or if the development area will include affordable or accessible housing units. And we're developing the funding sort of overview materials that will define affordable or accessible units. Basically, affordable, we're looking at housing that is dedicated to supporting folks with household incomes at or below 80% of area median income, and accessible units are generally along the lines of 88 compliant units. So a premium on those if you've got a housing development that includes those components, or if you have an area that's planned for that, or if you have provisions in your code that require that will also help to support your application. All right, so that's all LWIs in Goal 5. On the other side of things, for specific housing development related projects, the criteria are a little more straightforward. Project is expected to enable housing development by June 30 of 2027. The project will develop many housing units or high density housing. So we're looking to really, maximize getting housing built in the near term with these dollars. And again, higher priority projects will include affordable or accessible housing units. Next slide, please. So the review process is fairly straightforward. Once we send out the funding opportunity, I'll talk dates here in a little bit. We'll allow about a month for applications to be prepared, sent in to us. Once we get those applications, we expect to make decisions within 30 days of the application period. Unsuccessful applications may be reconsidered if additional assistance becomes available. I don't know, this says throughout the biennium. I mean, our budget forecast is not super great, so I don't want folks to rely on that. If it does come available, absolutely. But the other piece is in future biennia. So if your project doesn't get funded this time around, we think there will be a next time around, and so on and so forth. And that may also enable applicants to do some of the work sequentially. So you might do delineations or determinations of upland that inform where specific developments can go. Well, that can inform a future local wetland inventory work. It can inform a future Goal 5 program. So, some of this stuff could be done sort of sequentially. Our goal is to execute grant agreements and consultant contracts by approximately January 15 of 2026. All right, next slide, please. So we're also embarking on concurrent rulemaking. Actually, this Friday, we're going to the Land Conservation and Development Commission to request they initiate rulemaking to basically address this issue that we've described. The idea where UGB expansion areas need to go through this whole local wetland inventory Goal 5 process before any development can be allowed in those areas. So what we're proposing to do with the rulemaking is to tweak that in such a way that the rules would allow development in UGB expansion areas in areas where wetlands are not present. So, you would need to do a delineation or a determination of upland in order to facilitate that development. But it'll make that ability to develop those areas more quickly possible. And those wetland protections would remain in place until a local wetland inventory is approved and a Goal 5 program is adopted. The rules that we're working on is a fairly narrow and focused set of rule amendments. Our hope is that we will adopt them by June of 2026, so mid-year next year, at which point folks who are receiving funding from this program may benefit. So if you have delineations or determinations of upland, those might be used to inform development that could occur in an urban growth boundary expansion area. Next slide, please. And here's key dates on the funding side of things. So we are shooting for opening our application period on October 27th. I believe that's this coming Monday, at which point we'll have application materials on our grants website. We'll hold that open until November 24th. We will confirm receipt of all the applications that we get. So, be looking for that. If you don't get a confirmation of receipt, then feel free to give us a call. We expect to make grant award decisions by early to mid-December and have those funding letters sent out at that point. And our goal is to complete grant agreements and contracts by the end of January 2026 with assistance from regional representatives, members of this Wetlands Technical Advisory Program team, with the goal of getting work to start February of 2026. And that work would be done. I mean, we frankly anticipate for the most part, that will be done by consultants, either DLCD contracted consultants or consultants hired by local governments, if folks opt into the direct grant option. And then again, the end of the biennium, June 30. So deadline for project completion for final deliverables under this project is June 15 of 2027. Right, next slide, please. Oh, that's great. I guess that completes our presentation. I do want to say we will also be sending out a follow-up survey to everyone who signed up for this webinar. So you will be seeing that, I hope, later today. It's a short survey. It will help us to plan for this program and to hear kind of what you're thinking in terms of your needs. And I see a whole bunch of questions. So maybe we should jump now to Q&A. Should we start at the top of the chats?
Sure. For 5.
Okay. All right. Is that our first question there on the screen? Oh, okay. Okay, so question from Kevin Urban. Could it be used to determine what could be enhanced to allow for more fill for construction area? Is that a question for you, Amanda?
Yeah, Kevin, can we unmute him, because I think I need a little more explanation in order to
Oh, okay.
answer that question. I'm not sure what you mean by enhance to
Kevin.
allow. And fill, I'm assuming you mean to fill a wetlands.
Yeah, I think that if I'm not mistaken, the way I read the rules, you can get a certain ratio back if you enhance wetlands on site. You can fill other wetlands in other areas. In other words, you know, if you had a small area of wetlands, you know, that was like right in the middle of your construction site, you want to fill it, you could enhance something somewhere else on the property and be allowed to fill that in. Is this something that you could use this grant for, to say, hey, where can I enhance so that I can build here?
Okay, excellent. So, yes, the last bucket or category of grants, type of projects that I described included, it was called a mitigation plan. So the thing, though, to remember is that before a property owner or developer got there, they would have had to have done some previous steps. Because by the time you're thinking about filling, you know you're gonna need a DSL removal fill permit. So you will have had delineation, you will have had to have gone through an exercise to document your thinking on why the impact cannot be avoided or minimized. And then once you get that and you know that you have to have some impact, then you need a mitigation plan. And so this grant money could be used to pay for that mitigation plan. So I will say that if in a situation where there's a lot of wetland that needs to be filled, the cost of that and the things that go into a DSO review of a mitigation plan, both of those rise. So if the impact is small, then the DSL review is a little bit easier to get through, and the cost would be within the realm of something that we could maybe hopefully cover with this grant.
All right, great,
Thank you.
Yeah, let's go on to the next question. Sorry, I just had them up. I closed it because can the funds be used for wetland mitigation? If so, what are the parameters and requirements for housing, mixed use, etc.? And then another follow-up question, this is from Susan Patterson. Can it be used for, it says migration, I'm assuming that means mitigation on industrial lands. I can answer the last question. No, the focus of this program really is on housing. So with any application, there needs to be a tie to housing development in some way. So I'm sorry, but this program is really structured to be focused on residential development of one type or another. Could be mixed use, but again, housing is a component. The first part of the question, I'm not sure, Amanda, if you want to tackle that. Can the funds be used for wetland mitigation? I mean, you kind of just spoke to that.
I think I did
Yeah.
provide information on that, Susan. Should we ask her to say if we've covered?
Yeah, if we could unmute her, that'd be great. Sorry, Silas. All right. Oops. Wait. For some reason she's still.
Yeah, I was really wanting to know if it could be used for commercial and industrial purposes for mitigation. But it sounds
Okay.
like it's housing focused.
It really is. Yeah.
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 Okay. Answered my
I-
question.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and to follow up, I see Kevin's question on commercial, same story. Really needs to be a residential component to it. As I say, maybe a mixed use development, but still we're looking at a project that will really free up the residential development. Question from Juliana Gudino, can this grant be used for multifamily rehabilitation? I'm not seeing the connection to wetlands there, but maybe I'm not understanding what you mean by a multifamily rehabilitation project. So, Juliana, could you maybe speak to that question a little more?
Yeah, so we have a development. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a development that we are assessing right now for rehabilitation. It's been like 20 years in deferred maintenance, and it sits near a wetlands, and there's like a river that runs through, and we have like these bridges that have to go to the buildings to avoid all the wetlands area. And so it needs wetland mitigation. But that was something that wasn't assessed 20 years ago. So this is like a cost burden for the developer, because it, adds to the project and the project costs. So I just wanted to know if this grant helps to assist with that kind of work.
Juliana, I'd say that the explanation I gave before about the stepping into getting to the point of mitigation you need to consider within the project. Like, has the developer actually delineated the wetlands yet? Do you know how much impact the rehabilitation of the access, I guess, bridges in order to get to this housing development? But it sounds like it could. I mean, if we're really just talking about bridge approaches, the impacts to wetlands could be small. An alternatives analysis is probably pretty easy because the bridges are already there. I don't know if you would be able to come in to this grant cycle and get to the point of requesting funding for the mitigation plan, unless that other previous work has been done. But between this year and the following year, that sounds like it could be a project for us.
And do you guys assist with the delineation if we need that?
That's an eligible project that we would fund conceivably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand our comments are not, we're not saying, yes, we will fund that project. We will say that's a good, a candidate project that, we would welcome an application. Obviously we're not making funding decisions on the fly today.
Right. No, I get that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's worth us taking the approach to try to get these funds to help with
Exactly.
that of the project.
Yes, and I want to say to everybody who's on the line today, if there are some nuances that you wish to talk through with us, we're available to do so. My contact information is on the last slide, which we will be making publicly available. We'll put it on our website. We've got a web page for the funding program as well. Next question is another one for Amanda. Sorry, Amanda, you're getting a lot of them. I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you answer it. If a city has adopted, this is from Lori Joseph. If a city has a local wetland inventory adopted in 1998, is there a statutory requirement to update the LWI at a certain interval? I understand that UGB areas must be incorporated, but what about beyond that?
Lori, there is no requirement in rule. The rule has not been amended since it was created, this rule, in 1996, and when we still had periodic review for cities within the state. And with the loss of periodic review for most cities and for all cities, unless we provide funding for it, there isn't that update potential. So at least in rule. So that doesn't mean it's not ever a good idea to update an LWI. So there are some reasons why an older LWI might want to be updated. And but that's the answer to your question. There's not a requirement. And if you want to extend that into this grant, if an update to an LWI is what the grant the person was applying for, that would just have to be tied to making areas more available for housing or more clearly available for housing.
All right, the next question is from Nathan Fark. And I think I can answer this one and give Amanda a break. Is there any award preference for whether the local government or DLCD administers the contract? Nope, there is no preference one way or the other. We're trying to meet the needs of local governments. We understand there are some local governments where you might want us to manage the project. There's a lot of steps to it. It can be very complicated. Or you might want to have direct grant funds and hire your own consultant. And that's fine too. Either one is perfectly fine, and we are not prioritizing one over the other. But thank you for the question. The next question from Darren Nichols: will these slides and or presentation be shared out? Yes, both. We'll have the slides on our website. We will also have this recorded presentation, including this Q&A session, available on the department's YouTube site, and we should probably put links there on our website as well. There it is. Oh, I see. Melissa's already answered it. Thank you. You're on it. Yeah, and the link, I think that Melissa, she provided that. Yep, there's a link to the YouTube channel right there in the chat for you. Obviously, it's not there yet because we're still recording it. All right.
One from Kyla Parr, right above Melissa's.
Oh, I've also got one from David Martineau for that.
Okay.
David, we applied for a TA grant with the deadline of October 10, 2025 for the purposes of updating our LWI. Do we need to reapply for a TA wetlands grant? That is a good question. I happen to know, I think you're working for City of Albany. I'm not sure where the City of Albany sits in relation to whether you have. So this is an updated LWI. Would an update to an LWI rise to the top in terms of funding priorities? That's a good question. And I don't know that I can answer that right now. But again, David, you could always follow up with us offline, and we can talk a little bit more about the particular circumstance there and whether it makes more sense to apply through this program or through the technical assistance grant.
And to
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
keenly get to your question, I would think we would need a new application, but hopefully we will have our application structured so that it would be easy to move information from one to the other.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I missed that part of the question. Okay.
Gordon has his hand up, Kevin.
Oh, okay, Gordon, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah,
Gordon's my
thank you,
boss,
thank you.
so he gets precedence.
Okay, I'm Gordon Howard, Community Services Division Manager. I would encourage anyone who did apply for a TA grant to also submit an application in the wetlands program, and then we can figure out, when reviewing them, the relationship between the two applications.
Thank you, Gordon. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to our next question. Kayla Parr. Would these funds be available to support the establishment of a city-owned wetland riparian mitigation bank program? I'm sorry to say, I don't believe that would be a successful application request. I understand there is a need for that. I also understand that those programs take a long time to stand up. And because our prioritization here is really focused on near-term housing development, I don't think it's likely that would be funded this round. It may be in future rounds, but for right now, I think that would be my answer. And I'm sorry about that. I wish we had, $500,000 isn't going to go super far. I have to say it. If we had more funding, we might be able to broaden what we would consider here. All right. Next question from Ann Belisis. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your last name. If a city has an approved LWI from 1999, but DSL has advised an update, can these funds be used, or is this grant only for new LWIs? Well, it gets to that question of, is the city in a situation where housing development is not able to occur because of the need for an LWI? That's likely not the scenario for the city you're discussing. You've already got one. We do think, it's good to keep the LWI updated. Things do change over time. But again, probably not likely to rise to the top in terms of our funding priority.
Can
Go
I,
ahead,
I
please.
just say that, let's say an LWI is not, so if the city or a property owner doesn't believe that it's accurately, describing a wetland boundary, that basically, it's okay because the actual wetland boundary, regulated boundary, even for the city, which would be based on a delineation, presumably, right? So if the LWI is like, has been, like, the boundary on the LWI is like shifted maybe away, or the wetland shifted away from where the boundary is on the LWI, it's really the delineation that's gonna say where that wetland is and where the local protections apply.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Next question from Don Hardy. Would both housing within a current UGB and UGB expansion area be eligible for grant application and LWI? Yes. You can request a local wetland inventory for an entire UGB. Or, you know, in the case where you've done a recent UGB expansion and you really want to just focus on getting an LWI for that recently expanded UGB area, you can include that. So if you're in that situation where you want to include both your current UGB and the recent expansion, and I say the recent expansion in the past tense because it would need to have been done already, then that whole area could be included within an LWI, absolutely. And we would certainly be interested in funding that. All right, let's see. Next question, Darren Nichols. You mentioned that grants will be prioritized for projects that support high density housing or large numbers of housing or housing units. Those vary between communities. Can you provide any additional guidance on density or unit number goals? No, I cannot. There's not a particular number we're getting to. You know, I think when we are evaluating these applications, we're gonna not, you know, it's not exclusive to large cities. It may be smaller communities are also eligible. We're also, as we usually are in terms of our technical assistance, we're interested in spreading funding in different regions of the state. So not focusing all the funding in one area or another. Obviously, there are some communities that are more impacted by wetlands than other communities, and that's a consideration as well. So sorry, that was a wishy-washy way of not answering your question. I can't give you any particular numbers there. Okay, next question, from Andrea Reiner. Does anyone have a good scope of work for a citywide LWI update? Some ideas about the costs? Or can someone send me in the right direction for this info? That's a great question.
If you read down,
Yep. Oh, is there an answer in there? Oh,
Darren
wonderful.
offered to send information, Melissa also responded.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Sorry, I'm not tracking all that. Looks like we're good there. Okay, Therese Kohlerer. In a situation where the proposed study area within a new UGB expansion area includes wetlands which are adjacent to part of county lands, can the funded study encompass the entire area? This would be critical for area planning for new housing versus recreational / conserved lands.
I can take that.
Please.
So if you're speaking about LWI, then an LWI would do the work to approximate the boundary for the entire wetland. An LWI does not require property owner consent to be on the land. And there's ways of using remote data and just kind of judging stuff from a road or getting sample plots in the area where property owner access is granted. So that's why an LWI and you need to have the information about the whole wetland in order for the functional assessment that's part of the LWI to determine whether a wetland is a locally significant wetland or not. If we're talking about delineation, then or a determination of upland, I think this grant would probably be specific to a property on which development is being proposed. And because for delineation and an on-site wetland upland determination, I believe property access is required, so we can't necessarily assume that the property owners in the county would be on board for that.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question has to do with DLCD consultant list is under development. Are consultants being selected from the existing consultants list with DLCD, or is procurement open to new consultants through DAS? It's the latter, and I see there is a response in chat. So yeah, this will be a new RFP we'll be issuing soon. And I'll just say, kind of broadly speaking, we're looking for consultants who are able to do kind of the broad breadth of the types of work we've described, all the way from wetland delineations, determinations of uplands, through local wetland inventories, developing Goal 5 programs in coordination with local governments. Obviously, consultants can join together if there are different consultants who can do different parts of that package. But we're looking for teams that are able to accomplish that work. And as Josh noted here, yeah, we'll be sending the RFP out on Oregon buys. I can't tell you precisely that when that will go out, but as soon as possible is my answer. Okay. Next question from Kevin Urban. So could you fund an update for a citywide LWI that was last done in '99? I think we've kind of answered that question, which is it's not likely to rise to the top in terms of our prioritization this round. Okay, good. Let's see, and maybe our last question, at least in the chat, and certainly we can if people want to raise hands, and that's fine too. I see. Next question from Brianna Para. If a city has a draft LWI pending approval that shows nearly all vacant land in the city limits is wetlands, number one, would a delineation for those lands be a viable project for the funds? Two, would delineation in a proposed UGB expansion area be eligible? I will answer question two. I do not, if you're in the stage of proposing a UGB expansion area, we would not fund that project. If you have completed a recent UGB expansion, we would certainly consider it. But if it's still in the works, we're not going to invest money in an UGB expansion that has not yet been completed. And I'm going to turn to Amanda to respond to the first part of this.
So the first part, Brianna, I think would feed into, I mean, if there was a property, when you say nearly all vacant land is wetlands, if you mean that all vacant land is impacted somewhat by wetlands, and there's a piece of land, or there's a property where someone is contemplating housing development, and knowing the exact boundary of that wetland will be useful to figure out if a housing project is viable or not. Maybe yes, although you might have to be a little further down the line with the site specific delineations. I think we are expecting that those will be tied to like a project that's already in the pipeline,
Right.
So we can help accelerate that happen. And if it's really just kind of scoping for land, possibly not. But maybe for this question, maybe you should call one of us, Kevin, Melissa, or myself, and we can see in particular what your situation is and whether there's a scenario where this grant opportunity would be relevant to that.
All right, and our last question from Scott Woodford is, did I hear correctly that you cannot apply for the grant funds for wetlands delineation? Would this go around for a UGB amendment that is well on its way but not yet adopted? Yes, I'm sorry, Scott, that is correct. I know I know the city you're referring to is well on its way, but I think it's fair to say that we would need the UGB amendment decision to be final in order to fund that work this biennium. Again, next biennium is going to be a different story. Yeah, go ahead.
To that too.
Yeah.
So I don't know how far ahead if has the actual expansion area been determined?
In this case, I believe it's still in play.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are ways to get a sense of wetlands have wetlands on them. And particularly when you get to the point of being fairly sure about where the UGB expansion is going to occur, you can request what's called a offsite determination from Department of State Lands. And in fact, we are now in kind of in the practice of we ask DSL to do the offsite determination. And so we kind of know, we make sure that, just to make sure that information is in the record of a wetland being there, so it just doesn't get missed, if there is one in the expansion area. So those offsite determinations might be sufficient for your purposes, your needs right now, and an offsite determination from DSL does not cost anything. The more specific and narrow that, you know, the size of what you're asking for, the more quickly, I guess, the DSL can respond to that request. And specifically, we are kind of thinking of again, when the area has been selected, but if you had two really specific areas where you thought we're either going here or there, then it might be worth asking DSL for a wetland, offsite wetland determination for both of those areas.
Yeah. Great point. Let's see, the last question from Don Hardy, similar to Scott, if a UGB expansion and initiation is pending early 2026 with the draft goal 14 completed. Yeah, I think so, Don. I mean, really, the application should be able to show like, yep, we adopted this UGB amendment and we're now rolling into, you know, doing the master planning for that area. That would be a perfect time to seek funding under this program. And again, next biennium, hopefully we'll be funding the same work. But you know, we're hoping to be making these funding decisions like mid-December. So that's going to be our timeline based on the information in the application. So, all right, I think we're ready to close up. If anybody has any final questions, feel free to raise your hand. You don't have to type it into the chat. Go ahead,
Don
Amanda.
Hardy says, thank you, and this says, so after concept planning, and I think once you have adopted the UGB area, that an LWI can inform
Exactly.
concept planning.
I would say the same thing. Yes, it could be a component of concept planning or area planning, whatever you call it. You know, when you've just expanded the UGB, you need to figure out utilities, roads, zoning, and the LWI is really a good piece of information to have when you're doing all of that work. So yeah, that would be a good time for us to fund that work. Okay, so before we start losing people, I just wanted to note that we will be sending out a survey. We'll be following up to all the folks who have signed up for this webinar. It's a brief survey. We've only got 4 questions, but again, it's going to help us to structure this program and anticipate, you know, among other things, how many folks are maybe interested in direct grant funds versus department managed contracts, but also other things in terms of the types of work that you're interested in, and so on. So what is this? Oh, and Melissa has added some useful information in the chat here. DSL's website has a link to the determination request. It is a free service. So anyone who is interested in doing that, that is an option for you. Okay. I don't see any further questions. So I think we've covered it, and we're still within the hour, so that's wonderful. Great. I'm glad this has been useful to you all. Again, if you've got some particular questions that didn't get answered, feel free to follow up. My contact information is there on the slide. Right. Thank you.